Hello, welcome to the what third maybe MEGUG Lunch and Learn. Today we have Mike White. He's the consultant for Dirigo Spatial. Does a lot of work for municipalities. He's got a passion for mapping anything to do with railroads, and he's been involved in the mapping GIS industry since the early 1980s. Got a few polls to do today, and I also want to mention that we scheduled our fall conference. That's going to be November 14th at UMaine Farmington. I think that's everything I need to take care of, so take it away, Mike.
Hey, first thing, welcome everybody. I'd like to do a little poll first to just get a sense of what your experience is with QGIS. So if you could uh, fill that out and submit it, that would be great.
Hmm.
While that's happening, I'll also mention that for general questions and info, you can type in the chat, but also for questions for Mike, please use the Q&A and we will address those questions at the end of his talk.
Great. All right, so I'll get going. I'm going to share my screen now so we can see QGIS. I hope everyone can see that okay. So I let me say a couple things about QGIS. First of all, uh, QGIS is an open source software that has been out there for a while. It was created back in 2002, so it's got a pretty good history. It's created by a guy named Gary Sherman. I don't know anything more about him than that. It was originally called Quantum GIS. It's maintained by a kind of a diverse community, an international community. They call it the QGIS project. It's developers, users, documentation writers, translators, and whatnot. And there are sort of four key groups involved in QGIS. There's the QGIS Project Steering Committee. There are volunteer contributors. There are organizations and companies that actively support it. And there is an organization called the QGIS.org Association. And you can find everything there at QGIS.org. And that's where you can download the software, which, by the way, is free. Um, and uh, quite a great value, really, for something that's free. Uh, QGIS is released under the GNU General Public License version 2, so it's free and open to use and remains open source, which is really great. So the question I'm trying to answer here that I think a lot of people have is whether QGIS is a viable option to the standard GIS software that are out there and everybody uses. And let me explain how I got into it. Several years ago, I was struggling with doing some processing, linear referencing processing, and kept running into barriers and roadblocks and trying to use several different pieces of software. And I thought, well, I know QGIS is out there. I wonder if they handle linear referencing. So I just did a query in Google, and lo and behold, it said there's a plugin for it. So I I can't remember if I already had QGIS on my computer, but in any case, I some point I had downloaded it and installed it, and I played around with it a little bit. So then I actively started using it, and lo and behold, I was able to get this project done. So when I left my previous employer and reopened my own business, I thought, well, I'm gonna explore the QGIS some more and see what I can do with it. And because the bulk of what I do is for municipalities, or at that time anyway, um, I focused on doing those types of applications, and in particular, uh, applications and products focused uh, on the tax assessor primarily, but also codes and planning, kind of those three pieces. And it took some work. I will admit there was a bit of a learning curve. Um, it is a little bit different, but I found in the end that it's very consistent for the most part. So if you learn how to use one tool in it, generally speaking, the other tools kind of work the same way. So that's really nice. And as I worked and I've really discovered how rich their tool set is and how much it can do. And it's really quite impressive, especially given that it's free. So with that, I'm going to show you QGIS itself, or some people say QGIS. I say QGIS, it doesn't matter. This is what you get when you open it. Of course, I've got some projects that I've, been working on. Um, uh, Hold on, I'm just going to move a Zoom window. I've got some projects that I've already been working on that I'm going to use, and we can have some templates over here. And I'm going to open up just an empty one. And I can do that either here, or I can just click on this button in the upper left that will do the same thing. And it will open up a project ready to go, an empty one. Across the top, of course, we've got various menus. You can see there's quite a few. Some of these menus are from plugins, which I'll mention again a little bit later. Obviously, we've got toolbars. You've got some of your standard ones, your zoom tools, and so on. Selection tools here. These are data source tools. Over here, you can see some plugin tools and so on. These are snapping tools in this part. In any case, you can pull these things off. They don't have to be there, and you can turn them on and off. Over on the left, we've got uh, panels. I've got two open right now, but you can have other ones as well. The layers panel is very much like the ArcMaps table of contents. The advanced digitizing is something you can add in that gives you a great deal of control over your normal edit tools. Down at the bottom, I just want to mention down here, there's sort of a kind of an interactive dashboard. You can see the coordinates, scale. You can actually type in here to set the scale, magnification, rotation, and so on. So with that, I'm going to dive right in. It's not my intent to teach you everything about QGIS. That would take quite a long time, just as it would with any GIS software. But what I want to do is kind of just give you a feeling of what it's like, and show you that it really has quite a lot of power, and you can do pretty much anything you want as far as GIS goes. It does have some limitations, just as any other software does. So they do have an idea of projects, again, like other GIS software, and you can create projects, you can make templates and so on and so forth, and add things to it. Um, I'll get to layouts towards the end of this if I have time, but uh, I've got an open empty project right now, and of course I can eventually save that project if I want. Right here, again, I mentioned the data source tools. I'm going to go ahead and open data sources. And uh, when you do that, you get this data source manager. And you can see over here on the left, there's a large number of different kinds of data sources, everything from vector and raster, delimited text, so that's your CSV or tab delimited files, um, GPS. They handle Postgres SQL, also PostGIS, which is built on top of PostgreSQL. Microsoft SQL Server, Spatial, they handle that, Oracle, and so on. And to get all the way down here, you can see these ArcGIS REST services that you can add too, which is what I'm going to do now. I've got I've got a large number I've already got in here. I'm just going to add the main orthos. So this is that aggregate main orthos. So I'm going to connect to that, and there's my data source. I'm going to click on it and choose Add. It's just asking me how I want to reproject. I'm just going to accept the default. I always accept the default. I never worry too much about that one. So it's going to take a moment to connect here and pull that data down. The other thing I'm going to do is going to go up here, grab some vector data. You can see there's also directory, database, and so on. Um, I want to say just a brief word about directory. This is where you would open up an ESRI file geodatabase, and it can read them fine, but I've noticed consistently that I have problems when I zoom in that somehow it seems to not display some of the features, and I don't know what the issue is there, but you can't write to a file geodatabase anyway, so I invariably, if I have to use a file geodatabase, I export the data out as shape files or some other format to use those. So I'm going to open up a shape file, which, as everyone knows, is not really a file. It's it's really a collection of files. So we're going to open up some parcel polys. There are different options. I never get into those options. I'm going to add that and then close. I'm going to zoom in here to the parcel poly layer, and you can see it's giving me a default color, not a very pleasant color, by the way, this time. It comes up different color every time. And as you can see, of course, it's opaque and I can't see through that. So let's first play around with the symbology, just so you can see that. I'm going to zoom in on an area just so it's a little bit more pleasant. Once we zoom in, we'll start seeing um, the color imagery, the newer color imagery. So it's still thinking. You can see down here, there's a little progress bar. So I can go into right click or double click on this to get the properties. And right now it's set to a single symbol. I can turn off the fill. I can change the stroke color. So I'm going to change that to a pink color because that kind of, I find the pink colors really stand out better on top of imagery. There are different ways you can get colors. I'm going to show you this one. So I can just spin this to the area of the color wheel that I want, and I'm going to pull that little dot down and get a nice bright pink. And then click OK. I can change the thickness. I will do that more for your sake than mine, because I know seeing these things on a screen, sometimes it's difficult to see very thin things. And there's an opacity, but I'll show you that in a later step. So I click OK, and there's my parcels where I can see them. Now, now let's say I wanted to symbolize them with different colors based on an attribute. So I'm going to go duplicate layer, and I just remembered, Becky, did you get the results of the poll?
Yes. Hold on a second. What did you want to know?
Oh, I just curious how many people or what percentage have experience with QGIS or completely new to it.
Yeah, so looks like about 11 use it occasionally or regularly. And then about 30 are a little or none. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's about what I expected. it's kind of like I was several years ago. I had kind of played around with it, but I didn't know, I hadn't really gotten into it deeply. So I've duplicated this layer and I'm going to modify the symbology of the parcels. So over here on this um, sidebar, this icon right here is the symbology. Down here, we've got the labeling. There's all sorts of different things, managing the fields and the editors and so on. I'll be honest, there's some things in here I've never even touched. For the most part, I have everything I need, but I discover new things all the time. So right now it's set to single symbol. So every polygon is done the same way. Obviously I can change the color of any of these, make that a gold color. But what I really want to do is I want to symbolize them in by category according to a attribute, and I'm going to choose over here in the value, I'm going to choose polytype. And and the color ramp, there are different color ramps you can do. You can make your own color ramps and so on. I'm not going to get into that right now. And I'm just going to click this button down here, classify. And so it goes through the data set, finds the different values, and classifies them. And there's a value and then what you want to call them in the legend. So you can edit these right here if you want to do that. But what I want to do is I want to focus on changing these colors so it's a little bit more usable. So I'm going to change this to kind of a real pale yellow. It usually works pretty nice for parcels. Private right of way. I'm going to show you a different way to change colors on this one. So I could do it through this color wheel, but I can also select from standard colors. I don't want black, but I can change the value of it by just sliding this over. And what you see down here on the lower left of this dialog, you can see the color that it's going to be. So I kind of want to make that a little bit lighter. And click OK. Click OK. Public right of way. Oops, I didn't mean to edit that. Public right of way. Let's make that a pale pink. We'll just use that pinkish salmon color there. Rail right of way, we can leave that alone. State right of way, that's kind of dark. We'll try a different method. So you can play around with these things all you want. We'll lighten that up a bit. Yeah, that's still kind of very similar to the other pink. We'll darken it a little bit. Okay, click OK. The last one, I want to show you another way to do this. I can create symbols that I reuse over and over again, like hydropoly. I always use a light blue with a blue outline. So I can store those in here and then just select them because I reuse them over and over again. So I just click on that. I can still go in and change this, but it gives me a good starting point. I'll click OK. And then this last one is all other values. I usually take that and make it a really bright color just because I want it to really stand out because usually I don't want um, parcels or other data that have no value in an attribute that I'm trying to use, because then when I go to make a map, it may, not show up as anything. So I'll just make that a real obnoxious color. And I click OK, and there we are. So now I'm actually going to take that public right away. I just double clicked on the legend entry over here, And I'm going to change that. Um, I think I'd rather have that white color. There's white right there. So like that. Yeah, that looks better to me. Now, obviously, I got some issues here with the water. I can turn any of these on and off. I can turn on, you know, any of these turn off. And but as you can see, I can't see through the saturated colors, the opaque colors. So what I can do, I'm going to open this back up, and down here to applying to all of them is opacity. And you'll see this in lots of different things where like opacity, the tool will be done exactly the same. Like I said previously, there's a lot of consistency here. I can just type in 50% and I can apply that. We can see how that looks. I think that's a little bit still too opaque. So I'll make that, I don't know, 40%. Let's see what that looks like. That doesn't look too bad. So now you can see our parcels. You can see there's a railroad going through here and so on. Now, I'm going to shut off the imagery for the time being because I want to um, I want to uh, do a little demonstration of some geoprocessing tools. The first thing I want to do though uh, is I wanted to demonstrate also about styles. I can copy the styles that I've set up for a layer by going in by right clicking, choosing styles, copy style, and I can say all categories, so that would be symbology, labels, and so on. Or I can just say any particular one. So all I care about right at the moment is I'm going to do the layer symbology. Excuse me. And I'll take this one over here and I'm going to just paste that style. Now, I only have the one style copied, so it doesn't really matter whether I choose all style or symbology. If I had copied all styles, I don't have to paste all of them. I can just select which one. But I only selected one in the first place, so I'll just do that one. And you see it's copied it over. Very, very, very simple. Now, obviously, I can also save out style sheets to a file. So if I go into a different project, I can just grab that same style sheet. And then of course obviously I can change these. So whatever I want to do here, we're going to move on. If I turn that on, you'll see there's my new styles or my old styles again. We'll stick with this guy. So I want to do a little scenario where we take those railroad right-of-ways that you see in blue there and this is a pretty simple scenario. We're gonna take those, buffer them by 200 feet, and then use that to select parcels. Maybe the railroad's planning to do something and they need to notify the abutters, whatever. So it could be anything. It could be uh, you know, catch basins. It could be water mains. Whatever. Um, but I'm gonna use the parcels. I could add some other layers, but I'm gonna go ahead and use these parcels anyway. So the first thing I want to do is select those railroad parcels that you see in blue here. So I grab this tool up here and I selected one. I'm going to hold the shift key, select another one. But as you can see, there are multiple. Now, there's only a few in this particular data set. But if I was doing something like water mains, or I was doing something more complex, like I wanted to select out all of the uh, catch basins that are of a certain type of construction, that's not going to work very well just selecting them by hand, obviously. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to show you the attribute table and how we use that to do our selection based on an attribute. So I click on this button here, or I can right click and choose the same thing from over here in the layers. And you can see I've got two of them that are selected here. And I'm gonna show you how to select all of them using an expression. So these tools right here allow you to do different things with the selections. You can pan to them, you can zoom to them, you can add filters. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this guy right here. It's got the little um, uh, E character. I suppose that's a Latin character. I'm not sure. Uh, or Greek character, excuse me. So I'm going to click on that and you get this dialog. And if you look over here, uh, we'll build an expression on this side, and we have a lot of predefined things that we can use um, out of this. And I'll show you a couple of those. I also want to mention there is a function editor. I've never gotten into this, but you do have the capability here to actually write a function to do your selection. I've never played with that, so maybe somebody who has can share that with us another time. So you see down here it says fields and values. Well, these are referencing the fields in your data. That's these right here. And then you see some other things, feature and geometry. So you can actually do things with the geometry as well. You can select them according to their size or what have you. But we're going to just stick with the attributes that are part of this um, feature layer. So I'm just going to double click polytype and click equal. I happen to know, of course, that polytype is, whether it's a parcel or railroad or something else. And while I've got that selected, I can just click this all unique. It searches the data set, and lo and behold, there's rail right of way. I'm just going to double click that. And now I've built my little expression. Down here, there are different ways you can use that. I can use it right away just to select features. I can add to whatever I've already got selected. I can remove from a selection, and I can add it as another filter. What I'm just going to do is select features, and I'm going to close. You can see now there's more of them up here. And if we go out, you can see, I know it's a little bit hard because two different yellows, but the brighter yellow are the railroad parcels that I've selected. Just watching the time. Okay, so now I'm going to get into, okay, well, how do I do geoprocessing on that? So across the top, you'll see a menu here for vector, raster. I'm going to talk about plugins and processing briefly as well. I'm going to use the vector menu to get at some predefined ones that are in here. And you can see there's a bunch of different things. Geoprocessing tools, I'm going to use the buffer. You can see obviously clip and difference dissolve, creating convex hulls. There's all sorts of stuff in here. Um, different things. You can explore all that. There's also LRS, that's that linear referencing system plugin that I talked about before. When I added the plugin, it actually added this into the vector menu. So you wouldn't see that if you download our QGIS and start running it. You won't necessarily see some of these things. Some of them are ones that I've added. So we're going to, well, before I do that, so obviously raster, there's different things you can do with raster already, uh, database, and then processing, there's a toolbox with all sorts of things, a lot of the same things that we just saw, but there's many more over here. As you can see, it just goes on and on and on. And frankly, I find it easier sometimes just go out to Google and do a search in Google to find out what something's called because I don't know, often know what exactly they called it. I can search on things, but I find it easier usually to go to Google. There's just so many of them. So, and you can see some in here that are also plugins. So anyway, I'm going to close that processing toolbox for now. And then I also wanted to mention again the plugins. You can manage and install plugins uh, with that first menu choice. Uh, you can look at all of them that are out there, and you can see there's just hundreds of them, all sorts of things. And you know, they're plugins. They're from various developers and third parties, and you know, for the most part, I find they work. Sometimes you find some that maybe don't work exactly the way you want them to. That's just, you know, that's just the way it is, basically. But you can see the ones I've got installed here. I've got one actually turned off, actually a couple turned off, and so on. Um, so anyway, I found some of those to be incredibly useful, like this digitizing tools, geometry checker, and of course the LRS. I do quite a bit of linear referencing. So I'm going to close that. And let's go on to our um, little demonstration here. So I'm going to go to my vector menu, geoprocessing tools, and choose buffer. Uh, you can on the QGIS is available both on the Mac and Windows platforms, and it, as near as I can tell, it works almost exactly the same on both of them. But there may be some minor differences. But in any case, I can move this off onto a second screen, which I have, but if I put it over there, you're not going to see it. So I'm going to try to do this all in one screen so we can see. So I've got my parcels over here, and I've got my buffer tool window open over here. So I'm going to buffer the parcel poly copy. That's the one that's active here. I could choose, you know, any vector layer. I'm going to use the selected features only because I just want to use the railroad uh, parcels. Set my distance, and you can actually change the units if you want. If you maybe your data is in meters, but you want to do it in feet, you can set that there. If I leave it alone, it'll just be in the units of that layer. Segments, end cap style, join style, miter limit. Don't need to worry about that for this. And then I want to say something about the output. Now, one of the unique things I find and I really like in QGIS is that every layer doesn't have to be an actual shapefile or some other, you know, data source that has been made somewhere out on the cloud or whatever. You can actually create temporary ones. So if I don't set this output, it's going to create what's called a temporary layer. Now I could go in here and create, you know, tell it to save it to a file, but I'm going to let it create a temporary. And this last box is to open the output after running it, and it's going to add it in here. So I'm just going to go and click run. I think I got everything set. Now, as you can see, of course, it's created multiple polygons, buffer polygons. Uh, I can readily fix that. I don't have to go back out and in. And oh, over here on the left, you can see it added that layer. And you see this little symbol right here. That tells me that that's a temporary layer. If I go close this project, fortunately, QGIS will warn you that you've got temporary layers and allow you um, to stop leaving that project so that you can go save them. You can save them out. Like I can go right here, export, save features as, and I can make it a shapefile or maybe a geo package, what have you. So you won't necessarily lose them if you pay attention and actually save them. If you don't, they will go away. They'll be shown when you reopen it, but there won't be anything there. So you'd have to recreate them. So anyway, so that's a temporary layer. There's a setting over here for dissolve result. And just to, I'll make it two, yeah, I'll make it, let's see, we'll make it 180 just so you can see the difference. And I'm going to just let it go to a temporary layer again. Click OK. Now these dialogues for these tools, almost always, they kind of work the same way. They're very similar across all the different tools. Sometimes when you get into some of the plugins, the developers of the plugins don't necessarily follow all the rules. So sometimes they work a little bit different, but usually you can kind of figure it out. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And you can see now the new buffer is one solid polygon instead of the two. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one because we don't need it anymore. One of the things that is nice about doing it this way is that because you don't have to write an actual shapefile or something every time you experiment, you don't end up with, 10,000 files all over the place. You can just create these temporaries and get rid of them as you need to and save them as you want to. One other thing I'm going to explain to you about this before we finish that up is that the history of what you've done is also saved, and you can actually, I'm not going to show it to you, but if you want to do this again, you can go in the history and open that up with the correct settings that you used for whatever you did yesterday. That's really, really handy because I don't know about anybody else, but there have been so many times when I've done something, a couple days later, I go to do it again. It's like, I don't remember what all those settings were. So I always was in the habit, if I got something figured out, I'd take a screenshot of the settings so I could reproduce it if I needed to. Hey guys, so we have our buffer here. I'm going to just quickly make that opaque so we can see our parcels under it. Now I'm going to use that to simply select the parcels underlying it. I know this is a very trivial uh, little process we're doing here, but I just really want to give you the flavor of how this all works. So I have um, I have my buffer and I've got my parcels. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go here and there's a select by location and a select within distance. So location will do your usual polygon overlay kinds of tests. The select within distance is a little bit different. It kind of implicitly does a buffer. But we're going to do select by location. And again, these dialogues all work and look about the same. So we're going to select features from parcel poly copy and just the ones that intersect. And we're going to do them, select them using the features from buffered. And I'm going to create a new selection. Obviously, I can do, different things, add to current selections on. So I'm going to create new selection. And there's no layer created here, so there's no chance to make a temporary or anything because it's just all it's doing is selecting from an existing layer. So I'm going to click run. And there are my parcels. So one other thing I want to do real quick. I didn't really get into labeling and some of those things due to time constraints. I can't really do too much there. But another another time I can go more into editing and how you do that. But I'll just show you a little bit of the labeling. So I'm going to go in properties and I'm going to go to the label. I'm going to say single labels. And I'm doing this for the parcel polys. And it by default comes up with one that's the name. I really want that to be map, block, and lot. And I can click apply. And you can see there are my map and lot numbers. So 009, 015. Now, what if I want to also have the the acreage? So I can click my little expression button over here. So I get my expression editor. And you see it's already got map, block, and lot. I'm going to, I can use this button down here to concatenate. I'm going to put a space in between it. Just type that. And then I want to get the field for the acreage right here. And click OK. I'm going to apply. So now it says, 009, 008, 002, 2.24. Let's add on to that acreage, AC. So I'm just going to type it here. I don't have to go into that editor. We'll put AC period and quote. And of course, it's showing me whether it's valid or not. Apply. And there's that. Now, what if I want to put separate them on two different lines? I can do that. I'll put a \n and apply. And there we go. Now, there's a lot of different things you can do here. Of course, you can change the fonts and whatnot. And, I'm not going to go all into that. And there's a lot of things that you can do about placement, how it's rotated or follows a curve, whether it uses callouts and whatnot. So very sophisticated, I find, very powerful. Um, I have, it's taken me a little while to kind of figure out how all the placement and rendering stuff works and some of the call out stuff. But once I've got it figured out, it's really powerful and I'm able to do pretty much everything I want to do without having to just create annotation all the time. And another word about annotation. Uh, ArcGIS really has a nice way that they do annotation uh, internally, an annotation layer like in a file geodatabase or personal geodatabase. Internally, it's actually a polygon, and then there's a bunch of attributes, the symbol ID and annotation class and all those things. Uh, Unfortunately, QGIS and other GIS software can't doesn't do exactly the same things. So that really great control you have in ArcGIS to make annotation exactly the way you want, sometimes not there. So, but I found that with a little bit of work and planning, you can make really good annotation using the tools here in QGIS, um, and I found ways to take existing annotation layers from a file geodatabase and convert them first to polygons and then to a line, uh, and then use that line and label it. And I get really good results doing that. So I'm going to move on from that. I'll say, okay. Now, if it's quarter of, I'm going to skip over now to showing you a little bit about the layouts, because it's a very powerful tool and something I use quite a lot. To do that, I'm going to um, hold on a second. To do that, I'm going to go out to a different project. Uh, so I'm going to close this project. I'm not going to say here. It's asking me about the temporary layers. They call it a scratch layer here, and I'm going to go ahead and leave, and I'm not going to save that. So I'm going to open up this. This is an actual project that I did not too long, about a year ago, to make tax maps. And, I've got all my layers over here. Um, and I'm not going to get into the details of why I've got things a certain way. We can get into that another time when we do one of these, maybe more focused on output. What I want to do is open up an existing layout. There's a layout manager, and you can see I can add and delete layouts and do things to them, create new empty layout. I'm just going to go, I could open it from there, but I'm going to go here because that's where I usually open them from, and open up my tax map too, which of course decided to come up on my other screen. So I'm going to pull it over here so you can see it. So here it is. Now, obviously, it's showing parcels from a lot of different, wide variety of tax maps, not just the one I care about. If we look down here in the bottom, you can see there's text here that is set up for substitution, so that it'll say, map 1 or map 2 or map R15 or what have you. I've got multiple maps. The one on the left is this map 1. I can change the name, I just never did. This one right here is map 2. That's just an overview map. You can make map insets, of course, and the map insets can be coordinated between each other. There's just a huge number of things you can do in here. I really have not found anything in this that I can't do. Um, so there's a lot of different properties down here. But what I'm going to show you now is we're going to go to map 1, and I'm going to show you, in addition to these main properties, um, there's a thing down here that says controlled by atlas. So if I go to this atlas tab, you can see generate an atlas. I've turned that on, and I've said the layer that I'm going to use for that atlas is sheet poly. So that's just a bunch of rectangles that correspond to the map sheets that I want. And each of those polygons has a map name, and that name is right here. So this page name is what what you're going to reference this thing as. And I also have a sort field. It got cut off because it's a shape file and it's limited number of characters, but that's map num sequence. So I can generate my maps in a specific order. Now, this sets up how you're going to name them. And then I have the option of making a single file with all the map sheets, or if I leave this off, it's going to make individual files. So with that said, I'm going to go out and back out a bit. I'll do it this way. And I'm going to select a preview, and there's my map 1, R1. You see it rotated a little bit, so that's all set up to do that. Depending on which map I select, it may rotate more or not, maybe not. I don't remember which ones I might have had rotated. In any case, I can click through these. I can also go to a specific one, like I'll go to U3. Obviously, the scale bar is changing automatically, and you notice the text down here is getting updated automatically. And the printed date, again, that's a dynamic field in there, so that gets updated automatically. And now, let's say I wanted to output this map. I can output it in a number of different formats. I can output it as a PDF, which is what I normally do. And you can see it's built the name of the map for me. And I can just say save. I'm not going to go through this stuff, but I'm just going to say save. And I'll prove to you it actually did it. And there's my finished map, ready to go to the printer. I can do all of them. Let me get back here. I can do all of them by selecting this one over here for the atlas. So I can export atlas as PDF. And I'm just going to say open. So it's going to overwrite that one that I already did. So open, save again. And you're going to see it's going to cycle through them. Just takes a minute here. So with that, that's what I wanted to show you. I didn't get into a couple little things, but well, we can save those for another time. And at this point, we have two things we want to do. We want to do another poll. And this poll has to do with whether there are people on the line that would like to um, like to possibly start sort of like a special interest group in MEGUG focused on QGIS. Maybe something where we could get together periodically once every couple months and maybe have like 15 minutes of a little presentation of something that somebody's figured out, and then maybe follow that with, a little bit of time to openly discuss, or people can ask, hey, I'm having this problem. Does anyone know how to do this with the labeling tool? So if you could go ahead and answer that, that would be very helpful, and we'd like to possibly do that if there's sufficient interest. So with that, I'd like to go to the questions. I hope there are some.
There are. ESRI user here. I have a poster on my wall from ESRI with something like 32 different geodatabase topology rules available on their platform to help ensure data integrity as you edit in Pro. I see QGIS offers a topology checker plugin that looks pretty good. Any experience with it or opinions around this?
I have used that, and it's been quite helpful. It will uh, create, as I recall, a couple different forms of output so that you can find these features that have topology problems. Um, there are things that you can do that I haven't gotten into to check things as you do them. And certainly there are some topology uh, uh, tools in here in the snapping. You can set it up so that you can do topological editing. So if you got adjoining polygons, like parcel polygons, you move one or you add a vertex in one, it'll add it in the adjoining ones and so on. So there are a bunch of things you can do, and I have found them to work pretty good. Um, I also use FME for some of those things, so I kind of use a mix. Uh, but that's been my experience so far. Any other questions?
Brenda Cummings asked, can I join data to a shapefile? Common application example would be attaching taxpayer data to parcel.
Yes, absolutely. You can definitely do that. There's a couple different ways to do that in terms of what your data sources are. Um, Typically for me, I'm joining Trio data, and I don't have direct access to their database. So I'm typically getting an export from Trio. Um, that's the most common CAMA system here in the state. And I get an export from my customer and join it that way. And I can, I can join it and create a new layer, what have you. So yes, you can do that. And then of course you can use those attributes to do further things. You can use that to calculate, add new attributes that are calculated from the original attributes and so on.
Okay. Stephen Weed pointed out there are a ton of tutorials available on YouTube for QGIS.
Yes.
QGIS.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. And I neglected to put that on my list. I definitely take, full advantage of that. One of the things that you got to be a little bit cautious about is that QGIS has been out for now, what, 23 years? And some of the tutorials or videos that you see, um, and as well as things if you use Chat GPT or Google, Sometimes they're referring to older versions and they've changed some things. So, uh, you may have to kind of adjust a little bit when they say, set this particular checkbox. It might not be where they say it is. They may have changed the name of it. So just be warned about that. But generally speaking, if it used to do it, it probably still does it, but maybe just a little bit differently.
A few more. Taya Youngs asked, how do you manage data for your projects?
Well, that's always the problem with with GIS anyway. And I'm gonna show you something that I'm doing more and more of. I wasn't really anticipating this question, but I will show you anyway. So I'm typing in a password to a PostGIS database in using Supabase, which is PostgreSQL. That's a very strange name for a database, and I'm never really sure I'm saying it right. So excuse me if there's a better pronunciation of it. So this is something kind of like just a fun project that I work on, and I talked about actually not too long ago. These are all lost railroads in Maine that I've digitized. But what I want to show in here is this is actually, I won't get into the whole thing, just time constraints, but this is actually a post GIS database behind it. And honestly, working in it, you wouldn't even know. I mean, it reacts as if you were using a shapefile or something local on your computer. And I think this is the way things are probably going to go. I got a couple customers that are interested in doing this. And the nice thing about doing it is that, since you've taken the time to plan what your layers are and create those in PostGIS, or if you use SQL Server or Oracle, everything you do kind of stays in that one place. You do have to do some planning though. If you want to capture stuff over time, your parcels, for example, um, you may end up, instead of having multiple shape files for parcels, you may have one feature class in your database that is all the parcels, but there's an attribute that says, what the date of those, each feature is. So that's, I think, where things are going. Other than that, it's the same old problem that, with any of this software, especially in using like shape files and stuff, you just end up with proliferation. The best thing I can say about that is name your shape files and other files very carefully. And that'll help you avoid problems later on when you end up with two shape files in two different directories that appear to be almost identical. Anything else?
There's 4 or 5 more questions. How's your time, Mike? Do you need to hop
I
off or?
I don't. I
Okay.
do not have a train to run today after all. So,
Okay.
uh,
Um,
so yeah, I can stay on as long as you want.
okay. How does the speed of the program compare with ArcGIS?
I've never done any kind of side by side. Um, I don't, I really don't notice any difference, to be honest. Like nothing's ever jumped out at me with that regards. The the speed issues that I have are usually relating to the data that I'm pulling. So for example, here, I'm going to turn on the 3-dep product, which I don't know if any, you folks have used this, but the 3-dep product from USGS is just a game changer, especially when it comes to doing parcels. Because in the 3-dep product, you can see things like stone walls, which you can't see in the orthophotography. So You can see that's pretty responsive. I've got a fiber optic connection, so it's, pretty decent. Um, and the 3-dep one is pretty fast. I find the state one can be a little bit slow, but I don't think that's an issue of ArcGIS versus QGIS. I think it's just their server, sometimes I find I think it's getting bogged down or something. I'm not sure, and
Oh, I'm well
it'll take
aware.
me. Oh, okay. So I'm not the only one. So sometimes it can be a little bit slow reacting. And I will say, I occasionally, if I leave QGIS and go do something else for a couple hours and I come back and I start to use again, I've got imagery up. Sometimes it just seems to have hung and uh, I have to quit out of it and start again. So if you've got one of these imagery rest services going, I highly recommend that if you're gonna leave it for a while, make sure you save your project and save your any open feature layers, so that if you have to quit out of it, you don't lose anything. So just one of those lessons learned, if you will.
Okay, so have you worked with LiDAR data in QGIS? Are there special plugins for this?
I have not worked directly with LiDAR data, and only because, not because I don't want to, but only because for the projects that I work on, this 3-dep product is much better to work with. So I can't really answer that. I don't know if anybody else on the line is or on the meeting has played around with that. I don't know. We can check real quick and see if there's anything out there, LiDAR. So yeah, okay. So there's different ones, LiDAR Manager. Uh, so I don't know. I've not tried any of them. Open LiDAR Toolbox. That sounds promising. And you can see they're ranked and stuff. So this only has 54 ratings, but they're pretty good. It's had a lot of downloads. Um, so that's interesting. I might have to try it now that someone's brought it up. So that'll be kind of fun.
Okay, so kind of, well, I'll ask them separately. Is there a QGIS equivalent to ArcGIS's Survey 123 app for creating iPad field data collection tools that will integrate?
Not that I know of. Um, that again, I think I would look at Google search on that. I know there are integrations with other software, for example, with Felt and things. So I would not be surprised if somebody's done something like that.
And sort of related, does QGIS provide for any online hosting similar to ArcGIS Online?
So I've used Felt. There are others that kind of work in conjunction. They don't necessarily use QGIS itself. And I know there are some things out there about provisioning it for web hosting and stuff, but I don't have much experience with that.
So Karen Anderson mentioned there is Q field. That is a substitute for field map. So,
Ah, Q field.
Q field.
Field sync. It might be this one. Okay, so there's two different things. There's Q field, so that must be a different piece of software. Um, yeah, another thing I should look into. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe if somebody's got any experience with that, we can get a demo of that one of these meetings.
One last question. Can you do geotag? I have photos with XY location and want to map them.
So yes, generally speaking, yes, I get data that has latitude, longitude, well, typically latitude, longitude, and use it that way. I have not specifically done it with geotagged photos. Um, so I would be surprised if you can't. Um, and there's one other thing. Some of the data sources that are in here also have the ability to have you could have a column that has the URL for image or what have you that's in the cloud. So for example, if you've got all your tax cards generated as PDFs and they're uh, uploaded into the cloud at a specific location, you could build those URLs into your parcel polys, for example, and then there are tools in here you can you know use that to select a parcel to jump and see that PDF. So there are definitely integrations, there are ways to do that for sure. So if that's everything, what's the result of that poll? Is there interest in doing?
Oh, yes, yeah. I actually had to do two separate polls, but I think there was 30 or 40 people who were interested. So
Oh, wow.
I can put that list together for you.
Wow, that's
Um,
great. And so we could, uh, as the board, we'll talk about that some more and at maybe our next meeting and how we would go about doing that, as well as we can think about, later lunch and learn. There's a couple other lunch and learns kind of in the queue, I think, right now, and but doesn't mean we can't do another lunch and learn where we dive into specific things like the editing and more on the atlas layout generation. Some of those things that really need a good length of time to get into. Yeah.
Might also make a good workshop for the fall conference.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that too. Yeah, that might be a good way to do it. So we'll talk about that. We'll get back to everybody on the line as well as all our membership.
Yeah, so someone just asked, can I join that group if you're not in MEGUG? Yeah, absolutely. I think we advertise these lunch and learns to the wider population, so not everyone here is in MEGUG. In fact, I think there are more people signed up than we have members. So for this presentation.
Yeah, well, that's it. I was really kind of taken aback when I heard the numbers yesterday. I knew there was interest because as I go around to towns, I'm being asked about it. And because of the impending changes in the ESRI world, people are asking what the alternatives are. And so I knew there was interest, and that's why I wanted to do this, just to kind of reassure those people out there that are trying to decide what to do going forward that, hey, if you're a small town and you don't have the financial resources to do GIS in the first place, look at QGIS. You can do pretty much the things that you would do with some of these other products.
Well, thanks everyone for coming, and thank you, Mike. And
Yeah, my
we'll
pleasure.
see you at the next lunch and learn.
Thanks, everybody.